Okay, abusunya bɛma kɔ abaso so ɛde ba POG Media so abusunya yɛmbonwura ɛyɛ yɛnsɛm mu no World Bank auditors for abawura mu wɔ Ghana ha abusunya ɔmo aba abɔnten ECG ka ɔmo de no abusunya ɔmo aba abɛ audit bibia ayɛ expose Akuffo Addo ne nkɔɔfo korɔ no a ɛkyɛ sɛ ɔmo de abɔ and as a Ghana for abusia enye atam keto na World Bank audit no omo buy no omo free USA abonten so na NDC mom be pii mu e Ghana na audit no course wi no Ghana ye ho mobo it is a ECG company no it is a krono a akosom enye krono keto abusia yen se mo mre mo yenko na yenko nkuti ensema e course na abusia ma mo nim se USD omo auditors a omo bo adwuma yi ankasa eno enti na NDC omo ba ya say omo ba be years audit no e de ma Ghana for accountability enwo hia mo me yanko na yanko nkuti na ansa na e be kono o ensem kan bi afa share comment section ni mu like na share ma afoforo so ensa into me enka bi POG Media so political trending stories are make waves no yan so ya ja to say ya de bebrem
you have also touched on, I mean, all of you. So in terms of doing things differently, especially because all my guests have talked about this not being the first time something of the sort has been done. But the demand is that at this point, we cannot continue to do the same things and expect different results. Because the citizens are aware, much more aware than previously. We are spoken resoundly and continuously expecting a certain change in direction in terms of governance. What has to be done differently? Mr. Kujo.
Well, good morning to my good friends in the studio again. I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm sure Martin would disagree over the conceptualization of capitalism. What tends to happen is not capitalism, it's chronic capitalism, and that's corruption. Anyway, we can have that debate some other time. And I like the debate broached by the gentleman from the Workers' Union. Issues around productivity. And I think that's one of the questions we've not answered in this country quite well. Again, we'll get to that. You know, what we sought to do at the forum, don't forget I was given the task to present on the issues around good governance and maybe eliminating corruption. Well, of course, eliminating corruption is a big task, but I thought that we should reinvent, not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but probably change things a little bit. And I think all of you have been asking, what next? Martin just had the same question. We've had all these strategies, but what next? Which is why we thought at Imani that probably what we should be saying at that forum when dealing with corruption and maybe dealing with all this mismanagement is to take a critical look at the public sector reforms that we've had, public financial management systems we've introduced to curb corruption in this country. And if you take a critical look over the last 3 years, the question I've been asking myself, we've been asking at Imani is what exactly have we not been doing? We've been doing proof mark, we've done GIFMIS, we've done HAMSCAD, we've done almost all the acronyms that you know, probably with the exception of BOFRUIT. I'm sure very soon we'll get someone to come with the acronym BOFRUIT, right? And if you take a critical look at the system of all these public financial management systems, you realize that there's just one thing that runs through them: control. So the principal agent phenomenon, where the principal here being the government or the appointor, essentially believes that the bureaucracy or the civil servants would definitely do the delegated jobs. But they work within an environment where the public financial management system they have to work with is a kind of command controls type of thing, right? Feeding this, you start a budget process, there's a budget review process, there's an audit process, there's all to ensure that you attain what we call the fiscal deficit, probably a good fiscal deficit outcome, right? And if you look at all the various levels, you see control. Do this, do that, do this, do that, do that. Maybe if we decided that we're going to invest this relationship, whereby the principal even clearly gives directives, unfortunately the agent has so much information, in this case the bureaucracy, and they have so much information that it leads to what we call information asymmetry, which essentially means that the bureaucrat or the public servant here has more information than the agent, which is why you could see that sometimes when you go deep down into the corruption, should I call it a problem, realize that civil servants are actually neck deep in it, but they have so much information, and they eventually lead the so-called political appointees into trouble. Take the case of the contract for silk. You recall that the man had so much information about contracts. He knew the ones that were sellable and the ones that were not. Now, in order to, meanwhile, he's working within the public PPA system that is supposed to be watertight. If we look at the PPA system, it's supposed to be watertight. Why do these things occur? And maybe it's about time we ask ourselves, what if we invest the relationship where we sort of motivated these civil servants or bureaucrats to understand that we actually have to co-create this whole idea of control or probably getting outcomes? What if we decided, for instance, that ministers and chief directors will voluntarily sign on to some sort of a framework where openness and transparency will be the bulwark, or will be the yardstick, right? What it means that the vision that we all have is that we want to eliminate corruption, at least reduce it to the barest minimum. Then secondly, we ensure that they openly commit to this process through a radical transparency approach, through data availability, because that's another thing. If you don't have the data, you can never fight what you can see. I don't know if some of you have seen the video I shared recently about Musk. Musk, you may like him or not, but if you listen to that video,
Elon Musk, yeah?
Elon Musk. If you listen to that video, it's just a 4-minute video. He was having an interview with a guy called Joe Rogan. And clearly he's saying that, look, there's this information asymmetry. You realize that checks are processed, but they do not have names. They do not have the origin of the checks are not known. But for years, the US government has been paying these bills. And when he was asked to estimate how much he thinks that hole actually has been created, he said it's about 100 billion. How do you digitally remove something like this? We've been at digitalization for a very long time. What are we doing differently? So I'm thinking that the third approach would be that, well, the second approach, after having all these ministers and their agents, the bureaucrats commit to this radical transparency with open data. The third thing we should do is to have some sort of a hybrid system where we have town hall meetings, both physical and maybe virtual, and almost every aspect of procurement, performance, operations, milestones, tracking, and monitoring evaluation will be discussed. If you don't have information at that level, the next week you are allowed to fill that information. And we have this cyclical approach where eventually on the fourth level, we have citizens taking part as well. Citizens who want to be interested in the process, take part in this, what I call a collective, collective introspection of our budget and performance and what have you. And then fifth, every month we take a poll. I mean, every 6 months rather, we take a poll and find out which agents, which ministers, which bureaucrats are doing better, and then somehow praise them. I understand that somebody will be saying, "What about should I call it personal emolument?" Because some of them have been crying for good pay. Now the problem is that this country we seem not to be able to fix the so-called bloated public service wage, and so we never even have money to do anything. But in place of that, we can do this co-creation, do this whole thing, and decide that those who actually excel at the end of the year, we have some sort of performance contract with them, and they are publicly awarded by the president and maybe the minister for labor, and we acknowledge these persons. We think this approach, when invest, rather than the top-down approach, control system, may probably use some results. And by the way, this is not necessarily new with us. Rwanda has done something similar. In Singapore, they've done something similar. In Rwanda, they call it the Himihigo concept, which essentially meant that they borrowed from the traditional system of accountability, where people went to war, warriors went to war, and they committed or they promised that they'll excel. If they didn't excel, they came out publicly to be shamed or to shame themselves. When this performance contract model was introduced in Rwanda, in 10 years, from 2006 to 2016, Rwanda's economy grew from almost 3.2 billion to about $8.7 billion, right? I mean, they almost have poverty from about 67% to about 37%. And as I speak, between 2007 and 2009, the turnover of mayors, they have something called district mayors. Over 75% of them had to be replaced voluntarily, because you yourself will realize that you've done well or you've not done well. And so with time, they started introducing issues around corruption, all this monetary evaluation. And then within time, the whole country was immersed in Imihigo. Someone will say, well, Rwanda is not a country to copy. I'm not talking about the political systems in place right now. I'm talking about the system that has been enhanced.
Then finally, the World Bank came in. So the World Bank pushed for the audit. And the audit revealed it. Now Dubik was asked, you were under-declaring. Is it a crime to under-declare? How? Is it a crime to under-declare revenue? Can you imagine? So I'm telling you that this
public accountability system that has been enhanced, they are using with stellar results. The World Bank has written about it. You only need to Google and see it. Of course, in Singapore, they have done much more. In fact, this year, for instance, public servants, even at the get-go, are getting about $300 benefits, which they can use. As you progress, if you do well, you get $500. You know why this outcomes work? In 2018, Singapore was able to return a budget surplus, right? That every citizen got $300 being paid back into his or her account. So much to talk about meritocracy, pragmatism, and honesty in public office. So when all of you are asking for what should change differently, maybe we should try this approach, which we call revitalizing the economy through stewardship and ethical transformation. It is the word is stewardship. If we focus on stewardship rather than this command control type of system, maybe we achieve results. And that has been the thrust of my presentation at the NED. Unfortunately, I think for good reasons, I'll tell you later. But this is going to be part of the final report.
Interesting. So you see, all those countries that you referenced, they have something in common, and that's what Professor Stephen Addo mentioned in passing. A certain continuous form of development where there's no obstruction, so-called, because of an election. There has to be a change in the developmental direction of the country. So Rwanda, over time, you've had Paul Kagame be in power for so long, so there's a certain vision he's pursuing, which is not obstructed by a change in government. In Singapore, you cannot. No, I was just maybe when I end, you just answer the question.
Sure.
In Singapore as well, there's a certain vision in motion, which is not obstructed by, or which was not obstructed by elections for a very long time. He says maybe when we have a party in power for 20 years, with a vision being implemented over that time, maybe with a change in the leadership over that 20-year period. Let's try that as well.
Well, let me correct it. I wouldn't say that there should be one president for the 20 years.
Not one president, but there'll be a change in presidents, but a system that runs over a period.
Regime after regime, which is different from, yeah.
Well, I'll answer quickly to that. Someone also suggested that, well, because Rwanda went through a brutal, should I call it genocide, we probably should wait for our time. I don't think that is the way to go at all. And of course, there are examples on the continent that evoke the kinds of development that they have that also are modeled on the 4-year, 5-year cycle. There's Botswana, there's Mauritius, right? We can talk about being stewardship towards minerals. So stewardship in this case can be approached with different, can be applied differently. As Botswana has given stewardship, has given the meaning to stewardship to its governments. And today they are benefiting strongly. They're in the position to renegotiate with all the big guys. And my good friend is now the minister for, I think, the mineral sector. Forgotten her name, Bogolo, by the way. And she's doing amazingly well. They have a 4-year, they have elections, don't they? Yes, so you can take the stewardship model and apply. If I travel to Rwanda, and for 2 hours, I see street light from Kigali, from the center of Kigali to an outward of Kigali for 2 hours. Don't I like to see the same thing here? Has anything to do with the leadership of the country? In the case, this example of Imihigo in Rwanda, the elections, by the way, that's why I told you the turnover of local mayors, district mayors, was about 75% in 2 years.
Okay.
The point really is that, look, at the end of the day, you ask yourself, what outcomes do you want? What do you really want to achieve for yourself? So you can have this within, if you like, a mono-unitary or a democratic system. In any case, America, we're suggesting that this same system did not probably, well, America probably will be the outlier. But everywhere they've had elections, even in Hong Kong, before the Chinese took over, it was clearly a very prosperous country. So I'm not one now to replace elections with anything. Just to say that, yes, I identify the fact that Rwanda may be totalitarian, maybe halfway, but look at the results they are getting, right? And I suspect that all of them have not come through caution. I don't think so. This one, for instance, has been a bottom-up approach as a local system that has been enhanced. Can we do the same? I think we should just give it a try. And you never know. Human beings respond to incentives, right? Look, at Imani, we started something called the Inspirational Public Sector Leadership Awards. We assess leadership every year and then award the top 5 and the bottom 5. With time, we realized that was a top-down heavy approach. What if we work with the system to realize that there are certain goals we can co-create and work together, and then find a means of participating in it, and then it's a reward system that actually says, oh, you've done well. Other than those meaningless awards, you see people carrying all sort of funny citations, big citations, but they mean nothing. If all those things are attained by having this inverse relationship between the principal and the agent, why not? By the way, my good friend Dele, Sangu Dele, has enhanced our system, our suggestion, and it's written a nice article as well. You should look out for it.
Indeed.
Essentially, we are calling it at Imani, revitalizing the economy through stewardship and ethical transformation. Maybe that may be different. Maybe let's try that and see how quickly our local governance, work well. Look, I got a call from a guy who believes we have been the best at the vetting at the district chief executive level in one of the regions. And I know that he's a good guy. Now the guy calls me and says, oh, boss, I came tops, but could you speak for me so that I could get the job? Because I know my other 2 contenders, because the shortlisted 3, have ways and means. And I said, ways and means, what do you mean? So they know people, I said, well, if you manage to come tops, maybe the system is good. But see how frustrating he's going to look. If he doesn't get a job, he feels he's been done by him. But there's another vetting that's supposed to take place at the national level. We don't have to do these things to ourselves. If this were done at the center and left there and co-created, the gentleman will have no need to call me. You understand? The same way the president will have no need to fire him simply because he doesn't smile towards people. He doesn't say cheer. He doesn't say this and this. I mean, those kinds of things we need to do away with. We have to work with performance indicators.
And in fact, that leads me to the next question, because during your presentation, you talked about, you proposed that there should be key performance indicators for the ministers and appointees of this administration. You proposed to the president during your presentation at the dialogue. I mean, in what form should these KPIs come? I ask this because this is not the first time we're going on that path. You recall that Dr. Anthony Ěp0sě, who was then appointed as the minister in charge of monitoring and evaluation by the Akuffo administration, also had that charge of, and we asked the questions as to whether there were KPIs. We are told that that was his mandate, to monitor and evaluate the performance of the ex-Wild administration's appointees. We saw what happened. So how different is this?
Except, of course, it was not co-created. You know, when you go and sit somewhere and design your performance indicators and hand them over to the people to work with, they probably also need to understand the system. What we are proposing, even though it's related to just public financial management, we are saying that these performance indicators and milestones have to be co-created and accepted and agreed upon. It will be obvious to you that you haven't met it. Nobody will have to tell you. But that's not to say that we don't need monitoring and evaluation. You know, one of the things, it's a brilliant question you ask, because it's also the question about whether our governments actually respect monitoring and evaluation. Right from Nanado's time, who was it that was supposed to be in charge of public sector reform? From Sapumafo, right?
Yes.
With the budget he had, well, the only good thing he did was to edit a policy paper the NDC had prepared, the previous NDC had prepared. That was all that office ever did. No wonder it was shut down after spending almost 8 million Ghana cedis, or is it $8 million on that office. But there's another thing. That office was never respected. If it was respected, it would have been a cabinet level, should have been given a cabinet level recognition. You know why? Like Musk is doing. People say Musk has no mandate. He's not crossing heads with some cabinet ministers in America. Maybe yes. But the reason why he comes to cabinet meetings is because he comes to report the president, and this is what I found. This is a whole I found. Systems don't talk to each other. So can we have the Minister of Communications make sure that all ministries are coordinating so that when we send our salaries or the controller, we know exactly what people are being paid for. Maybe it will lead to revitalizing or changing this whole concept of the way we reward people here. The so-called single spine thing. You know, the gentleman from Labour was saying productivity is a problem. Why should I have a degree and he also has a degree? I have a degree in maybe I'll not like to use something else, but simply maybe it's just a human resource degree. And he has a degree in accounting. He breaks his back to do financial analysis. And I probably see that the whole day doing nothing because I have no job. Why should we be paid the same amount? You understand? Over time, with such a system, we'll start seeing those who are really working and those who are not. So all we are saying is that we are provoking an idea. And look, can you rethink the model you're dealing with? So the Ministry for Monetary Evaluation was shut down the next time, not because Anthony did not do well, because the president did not respect that ministry. Tony Addo used to be the same person who used to write to ministers at the time, and he confessed openly on Joy FM. And he writes the letters to them, nobody gives the toss, they don't mind him. Until that ministry or that power is given some level of autonomy, works at the, giving some level of power, recognition, works at the cabinet level, liaises with the cabinet secretary and the president's secretary. Nothing will change. That's why I find it laughable in a way that the minister who was appointed for public sector will achieve zero, nothing, because she has no power to direct officers to answer her. They will not mind it. If the President John Mahama has raised that office to the level of a cabinet minister, she can come and say, okay, we probably want to work with a co-created idea. And working with this idea, this minister, even though she's
okay, abusua we ne ensema ekoso ewo political highway so World Bank audit free US abonten so energy say John Dramani Mahama emomo ebeyesa audit na NPP for any Akuffo government no omoto adahwa enye asem keto akra yense momene better man say moje pene kokoti za audio we edimai POG Media so